I'll call this joint meeting together at 5:07. Hope everybody had a weather today and enjoyed everything. Hi, Marissa. She's really good. I always write to her and say, make your magic, because I know. Roll call. I'm here, Mario's here, Gary's online, Eamon's here, Pat's here, Robin's here, Donna's here, Doug's here, Sue F, John, Fiona, Ellen, Amy, Kemp, Dave, Dan, and John. John, where's John? John, why don't you stand up, give your name, and give your background. He works for O&G. Great guy, young guy, helps us out.
Yeah, John acts as our project engineer. He's stationed at the project site. Document control is his primary responsibility, and everything else we can throw at him.
You're doing a good job.
Doing a good job.
Thank you, guys.
Don't
He
need
was
to.
out there Friday with us trying to figure out the widening of the.
Yep.
network, so thanks for
If you need somebody, I'm in the trailer, so feel free to stop and say hi.
Don't tell them that.
Knows all the technology to really helps us out a lot. Okay, and Brian Scott's here. Okay,
Okay, for the board, Mr. Berger's excused, Ms. Capabianca.
Here.
Mr. Corey's remote, Mr. Predis remote, Mr. Ucolito remote, Ms. Papiano excused, Ms. Hona, Mr. Kisco.
Here.
Ms. Richardson excused, Ms. Tilder excused, Mayor Carbone not here, Mr. Barlow, Ms. Ferguson, Ms. Kondazuski, Ms. Labamski, here, Mr. Petrozelli.
So did you say Mr. Barlow?
he's not here.
Yeah, here.
I thought you said he was here.
I
Sorry.
said not here, sorry.
Have
Thank
a
you.
motion to approve the agenda. Okay, have a second?
Second.
Second, come on. And- no. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have two sets of minutes. First one, August 18th. Very copious minutes. They're not close yet.
I just learned.
Have a motion to accept. John. Second,
Second.
Donna. We have a minute for- Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye, opposed? Next one, August 31st. John. Second. Second, Robin. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, any public? Okay, update phase 2 bidding. You want to start just?
Certainly. So we
ramifications?
collected bids on 2 dates so far. As you know, we had a initial bid opening on 9/1. We collected from 4 trade packages. We then went ahead on the 13th and collected from an additional 22 or 23 packages, 23. Those results took us back a step, but we then opened again today for 2 additional bid packages. There is 1 bid package remaining to pull pricing in on. That is large package. It's the aluminum windows package. And that package is due to us next week on Thursday, 2 p.m. The results were provided to everyone through Ed's.
Right, and today they got the additional.
Right, so what we do is we identify for everyone, the bids that came in, a couple of requirements that have to be included with the bid is a bid bond and a DAS update statement, and then record the values of each bid and alternates. So if you flip through those documents, you'll see, basically bidder participation and how close or how wide the spread between the different contractors and their proposals. It gives us a good idea on how the market was, how it reacted to the project. Overall, we did get 3 bids on most all, 3 or better. There were several that had 2, and that's really just a situation in the market where our market pool, our contractor base, has been preoccupied with some additional projects that hit the street simultaneous to ours, and that reduced the bid pool slightly. And there's just, it's a difficult market out here. It's a big job. It lasts a long time. Contractors are not, chomping at the bit when it comes to things that are 2 and 3 years out. So that's where we are with the bid process. We do have information to share, financial information on how we landed, what our projected lows are. The process from this point going forward includes vetting each and every contractor low apparent, going through the rigorous process of understanding their understanding of the scope that we've assigned to them and what's in the documents, making sure they haven't missed anything. Out of the packages, there were only 2 that were either incomplete bid form or just in the final cleaning package. We had 1 vendor that really didn't have the scope of work. But those are 2 small numbers. So overall, we think that you're going to be able to get to agreement with the vast majority of your apparent low bids today. Again, that process is vetted through now with our one-on-one scope review meetings that I hold with each and every contractor, with SLAM's participation, their consultants' participation, members of the building, where Ed and Mario join us in those meetings. And again, we vet and confirm their pricing and their scope. We've already done that with the 4 trades that we had expected to bring to this committee this evening. So our critical path trades that we put into the first bid opening: structural, I'll start at concrete, structural steel, waterproofing, and the site work package. All 4 of those contractors have vetted. We have a couple of things that we've gone back and forth to make sure that they will include. They have included them at their bid price. So we've got good solid first 4. It's at this point that we did get the rest of the bids, and we hit some snags in where we are as a group. We wanted to be able to bring to this committee a path to reaching the budget that you have. We have a shortfall, or we took bids and they were higher than we thought, higher than we could hope. And so we had to go back to the drawing board. That process, we took bids on Tuesday. That process has been heavy since Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday and again today. We've come up with some information for you as far as what we see as opportunities to close that gap between where the low apparent total is and where we are.
I don't want to give any updates. Will we go into that?
No, there were like only, when we opened up bids on last week, there were really 4 bids out of 24 that were out of line. And those 4 were really looking at. If those met, we wouldn't have a problem. We still don't have, we still have a little problem, but those 4 were really out of line. But that's the bidding process. So we met, and Mario and I were at the scope review for hours, and that was it was good. And yesterday and today, we met to go over some lists. We called contractors who were the low bidders to help us see some of the items, which we have seen. We're still gonna see more items once once we start the scope on the other 24. For that, we did scope, we're sending them a couple of notes. There was a couple of items that we still are waiting for them to give us a price. Anything else, madam? Nope. So, yeah, so.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So has somebody reviewed to ensure that the low bidders have met all the requirements of what we originally scoped out for the project?
Not yet. In the case of the first four, so that's what we call a scope review meeting. So once the bids come in, I reach out, I have phone conversations with the low and the second low, making sure that generally we just talk about the job. Find anything that's, maybe loose in between the two players. And then we sit for, as Ed mentioned,
2.5
hours. So I'll hold the scope review. It's anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours with each particular trade. And then we'll go through the list of scope items. I have lists in that range between 20 and, in the worst case, site work, which has 140 specific things that I ask a question, do you have this? What did you see here? Do we have a clear understanding of scope of work?
So does that include the two lowest bidders or only the lowest bidder?
In this case, we didn't need to sit with the second bidder, that we only sat with the apparent low
For each of these trades?
for those first four.
First four only so far.
For the first four only.
So Fiona, there are some strategies there sometimes, right? If there's if for instance, our concrete bids, right? If we had 4 concrete bids and they were all within 1%, and they were very close. So in a case like that, it's evident, they all saw the same thing in the document. So as long as, Dan and company, as they're going through the scope, as long as everything that we have on their list is checked off, there's no need to go to the second bidder. Sometimes what will happen is if there's a bit of a spread between the first and second, we'll reach out to the second bidder first, maybe not do a full scope review, but just say, hey, what do you think the low bidder would have missed? And they'll usually feed us a lot of information, say, well, we have this item, that was a big item, make sure they have this, and then we use that to also go into those meetings and form and say, how about this, how about that? Because the people that were right next to them bidding it flag some of these things. So there are instances where we'll scope.
So how
The
would
number
we
one.
know as a building committee and a board of ed, how that process is setting out? Because, so if we're changing the scope of things,
We're
Not yet.
we are not changing the scope of things.
you were just
Scope-
talking about finding cost efficiencies with the lowest bidders.
Not cost efficiency. I apologize if there's misunderstanding. The scope of work is clear. It's in the bid documents. That's a defined item. What we want to make sure is that they've carried and we have the same understanding of a statement. If I state you have to provide winter protection in this location, is it clear to you where that location is? That's the type of clarification that we get, so that we have a meeting of the minds.
So how would we vote on awarding these without that scope process being done?
We're only gonna
Oh,
vote
it's
on the
not.
first four.
Okay.
No, we're not going on the first foot.
We're not gonna even do that tonight.
Right.
No.
And that's where there is this process of going through, scoping them, and sometimes it does involve them leaving that day, going back, doing some homework, and then reconfirming things to us. And until we're satisfied in conjunction with the design team and, the building committee members that are there, until that's settled, we don't issue a recommendation letter.
Just because there's a couple of them that look so far off to me that somebody has to be missing something for their bids to be that off. And one of them's the flooring one, looks not right to me.
Yep.
But there's a couple other ones that
Yeah, well,
just
like
seem
The
really
demolition
far
one
off.
was a big one as well, but Dan's already done some homework on that as far as calling to make sure that the scope is there. So it's a
Well, the whole
it's a very time consuming process.
So the whole process has been completed for those first four packages.
Just for the first floor.
Just give you an instance on, that's why it takes 2.5 hours. Just on site, we had 148 questions. Yes, make sure that boom,
Right.
boom.
And we even have you know, where it's applicable, we even have our estimators in the room as well. So when they say we carry this many of that widget, again, we don't necessarily want to know exactly how many widgets, because we don't want to, if there's one more, we don't want to pay for it. They don't want the drawings, but they're there to say, okay, yeah, we agree with this. So there's a lot of resources brought to bear to make sure that what we're buying is what we're intending.
Now, in keeping with Fiona's questions, if the first place flooring guy who's way low says, he answers all those 148 questions, I got it. You gotta give it to him, right? Unless there's some reason,
Unless
Some
there's a reason
history.
that we would not, unless, you know, if we look him in the eye and we have a bad sense that although he says he had it, we know his estimate couldn't have.
or if he has some things pending against him, or whatever the case may be.
It's on a rare occasion that we would not make a recommendation. All the time, if they're willing to commit to the job and to commit to the contract scope of work, we're willing to make them the recommended appearance qualified bid.
And the worst case that I've seen recently is we had a contractor on the project who was just hadn't done a lot of work of this magnitude. And he said, I got it. We ended up actually going, even getting his bonding company to write a letter saying, do you understand what your company is looking to engage in and the difference in bids? And we actually ended up, you know, that bidder, we ended up disqualifying them for that. But there's, like, again, it's to no benefit of ours to recommend someone that does not have all the work, because whatever's in those drawings that we didn't buy with them, we're still responsible for it.
So what's left of the four here that we're talking about? Or we're not gonna vote on it tonight, but what's left to do? Due diligence.
Those four are well vetted.
Okay.
The reason why we're not doing it because the budget, we're gonna give out the budget and so that's why we don't want to approve anything until until the budget is with the budget overall.
What happens when, you know, they give us the bid and then it ends up costing them more? They come back to us and ask. They can't ask. for
They
more
have to
money.
justify it.
Well, what do you mean as far as?
I don't know,
If
so
there's
this
that-
one says, you know, in the millwork and lab is 2,980,000, then they wanted another couple $100,000 because it went over. How does that work?
Oh, they get it's a
They
lump,
can't do
it's a
that.
lump sum contract they
Okay.
issue them. The only entitlement they have is for change in scope or something that was not bought with them.
Uh-huh.
But they are.
So they're committed to that number.
And again, the contract, the exhibit to their contract is all of the plans, all the specifications, all the addenda, like on those bid tabulation sheets, you know, and one of the things Dan checks when they read them is, did they acknowledge all of the addendums, which are all of the supplemental information that's issued from the day we publicize the bid. There's and kudos to Dan and the team, and the design team for fielding all the questions that come in, all of the trades. Those questions generate revisions and changes, and there was just mountains of paper that's issued during the bidding process, and through that addendum process where we get them to acknowledge, yes, my bid to you is based upon the most current set of documents that's there.
Referencing the addendums on the top four that we're looking at, for example, on the site work, it has the column addendums 1 through 5, so only 1 through 4 in those two. So that means they get checked off.
No, in that particular case, the bid date, as you recall, for the first four packages was earlier. So actually only addendums 1 through 3 were technically assigned to them prior to their bid date. But I had issued between addendum 3 and when they actually submitted the bid, addendum 4 and 5 went out. But part of what I do is make sure that there's no scope changes in those addendum 4 and 5 related to site work or steel or concrete or waterproof. It just happens to be a timing thing there. And, you know,
So what if they didn't bid on the addendums? If they don't have a number, does that mean it's included or they don't have
so
interest?
that would be that would be similar to a situation where if I said you had, you know, you had to do the temporary protection or the water or the winter protection. Either you're going to accept the fact that you missed it and you're going to include the work up to that point in your bid, in the lump sum contract that we issued. You have to agree. As a contractor, you have to agree. and they have the option, or not really, they don't have the option, but we would then let you know if they're, if they're an at-risk contractor. But, majority, those addendums are recognized as what is included in the bid. If they've failed to include something in their bid form, it would not necessarily mean they missed a large scope of work. As the addendums, to give you an order of magnitude, the addendums 1 through 3 and 1 through 4 had significant cost value. And then we get to 5, 6, 7, where there's minor tweaks in, was it a 5-knuckle hinge or was it a 4-knuckle hinge? But in order to make, once that question is asked and SLAM provides a response, SLAM does due diligence and updates their document to take that clarification out, so that if they had 4-knuckle hardware in one spot and 5-knuckle hardware in another, they clean that up and make sure it's the response to the RFI is provide 5-knuckle, and the documents get updated to show that.
And then just one last question.
Yeah.
So if in the original scope of work, as you're flushing this out, if we're losing anything in the process, we would be notified for going with these bidders. I'm just gonna use one example because all projects have had a problem with this, and I don't want to focus on the flooring, but I'm focusing on the flooring just because it's easier for me to understand.
Yes,
These jump packs underlayment for all the classes that have teaching spaces under. So that's an expensive
it's an
thing, but
expensive,
it's a noise issue. So it was in our RFP when we sent it out.
correct.
And someone will ensure that that is included in their
Absolutely,
final
on that
bid.
specific item, it's a very expensive item.
Right.
It's one of the questions that would be asked in the scope review.
Okay, because that seems to be where people have had the biggest problem with the flooring, and that it hasn't been included. And that's been the difference between the two bidders. So I just want to make sure if that was the case, that we would be made abreast of that, that we were giving this up by going with this.
Yeah, if there was ever a contractor being recommended where they, where something wasn't in bid, something that was specified or in the contract documents that wasn't agreed upon, that they hadn't agreed to provide as part of their contract, we would let you know.
Okay.
It's a rare occurrence that happens. They either agree to it, they have to have it, and then we put it in writing, we put it in their contract, we put it in the scope minutes, especially if it's a big ticket item.
So I'm handing out. Spent a number of weeks on, especially today. It's a draft budget summary based on the bidding to date.
That's that file that I created.
And
Sure.
yeah,
Okay. All right, so just to frame of reference for everyone relative to what's on the screen or in front of you. The left-hand side of the piece of paper all essentially collapses to be what's represented on the top line on the right side of the sheet of paper. Okay, so again, the sheet grew organically as we've been crunching numbers the last few days, but if you look at the right side of the page, that's the total project budget. This is all putting things in perspective of the $179,575,000 budget for the project, right? So on the right side, we have the trade cost, which is the top item, the various, the O&G information, the contingency. And so what we do is we total up where we're currently projecting the budget to be, which is the 183 million. So that's where the top line is there. Below that is the listing of potential savings, which we can talk about further, but I wanted to give you the frame of reference that's what we're trying to make up for, is the 183 million versus the 179 million. So if we then look on the left side of the sheet, the top line is, this is as of today at noon, we received $139,798,200 of trade bids. And included in that number are the couple of instances that Dan mentioned where there was something glaring right out of the gate. So we did not, if we're not factoring in the low number on a couple of, I think it was final cleaning
Final cleaning and fire stopping.
and fire stop.
That's based on the lowest bid, right? The 139 million.
Yes, that is the, right, that's the lowest. And again, right, the scope review process is where we get to the lowest qualified responsible bidder, right? This is apparent low is what that is. That's just black and white. That's the number on paper. Yep. Now, this next number, the 9,663,000, that's the aluminum entrances bid package Dan was speaking to, that we're receiving that a week from today. So for the purposes of the calculation, all we can do is say, all right, we're gonna put that in our calculation as the amount that we budgeted at. And we'll have to take it from there. We know nothing else to say, well, we're gonna put in less or more at this point, put that in. So it gives us an updated total for the trade cost. It's 149 million. So what we're doing is we're comparing that to the 142 million that we had budgeted at the end of the 90% construction document set. So that gives us with an overage of 7.3 million, which is just over 5%. And 5%, we'd like it to be lower, but again, dealing with a project of this size, a couple percent is millions of dollars, right? So it's helpful to see the percent, because when you see the seven-figure number, it just seems that the impact is different. So what we then took from there was we started brainstorming ourselves, the design team. We started reaching out to some of our trade contractors who, some of them are the apparent low, some of them are not the apparent low, but we have good relationships with, saying, listen, what are you seeing? Where are some opportunities where without taking away from the project, where are some things you see some opportunities to save some money here? So we've been trying to crunch a lot of those numbers. And we've started to compile this list of things. All right. And where we heard that it was $100,000 savings, we say, you know what, let's put it in as $70,000 in savings to try to approach this cautiously. So we go through those items, and, you know, again, it was a bunch of Amy talking with her design consultants and getting information, and us talking to some trade contractors and doing our own research with our estimators and trying to crunch some numbers in a short period of time. So we come up with a list of approximately $2.3 million that we feel that we can make some revisions. And again, I'll say revisions in that they have to be thoroughly vetted to make sure that the program that you were agreeing to provide here is not being copied, right? So it gets us to the updated projected trade cost of 147 million, which is then what plays into the right side of the sheet. So once we got that updated number, which we're going to continue to work on the next couple of weeks, especially as we scope these other 24 contractors, it's going to be a big part of the discussion is where is it that you're seeing, you know, again, there was a follow-up meeting had, it was that yesterday regarding the site stuff, right? With some of the,
Right. One of the largest bid package is your site work package. And so we looked to that trade and said, where do you see opportunity for savings here where maybe, you know, so we vetted a couple of good ideas. The first was, just to get into the specifics, I guess there was three things out there. One is the drainage below a typical turf. It's grass planted turf, not a turf field or a synthetic field. But the section included a 7-inch layer of stone covered by a geotechnical fabric. But we've had very little ponding. We find your soil to be very, you know, it takes water really well. And so we met with Mario, we met with Welty, the geotechnical engineer, and we dug some test pits in the areas of the future fields.
Henry.
yeah, the civil
And
engineer was
yeah,
out there as well.
sorry, of course, Slam is always involved. And through that review and really looking at the field conditions, we saw the opportunity to say, yes, we can capture those savings. It's the geotechnical engineer of record that really is going to stand by the design of the field. And so that's one example. Another was the section of what's known as subbase, which is a drainage material below hardscape. So you have a sidewalk Below the sidewalk, you have a processed aggregate stone. Below that, you have a drainage material. Well, that drainage material was very thick. In most details, it was a foot. In some locations, it was 16 inches. Again, looking at the native material, it takes water. It has free draining capabilities of its own and doesn't need that thick of a section. So those are two identified items that the site work contractor brought to us that we vetted through the design team and are now on this list of potential savings to the contract. The contracts will go out to the trades as bid. That's a requirement of state. What we do from that point is, as we would do an upward change, we process a downward change. We just need to get to a value for that downward change, which each of these trade contractors, that is the apparent low. And that's where our process goes from this point forward. The ground improvements for those two things alone is $665,000. Maybe we can get $700,000 out of that. We've carried the low number here, but we're going to work in our process of vetting with each of the apparent lows, what those opportunities are, and then document through the SLAM, contract documents the change, award the contract, and then capture a deduct from the trade. That brings us back into alignment to where we wanted to be before we brought our recommendations for award to this committee. We wanted you all to know that we have a path to get to a budget that works. Right, Dave?
So with that, I guess can I impose upon you to talk about as far as when we start to talk about the potential savings on the soft cost side of things, a couple of things came up there.
Right on the soft cost side, first one is the whiteboards. We have in the whiteboards $1,080,000 in our soft costs. Spoke to Allison, gave me a price of what the cost of the soft whiteboard is, interactive whiteboard, and spoke to Sue, and we can reduce that by $580,750 because of some grants coming out. Still have $500,000 in there. We have, with central office and the library and all the rooms in the middle school and high school, there's 131 rooms, conference rooms, so forth, that will use a interactive whiteboard. So let everybody know that. The second one is FF&E. In the budget, we had $5,650,000 of soft costs for FF&E. We looked at what the average per student would be for furniture, fixtures, so forth. So with SLAM's help, we can reduce that by $500,000. We still have $5,150,000 left in FF&E. Those are the two. Again, if you just look at the top, ONGs, that's their general conditions, their bond and interest and insurance fee. That's a set number in each category that was negotiated on. So we have that. ONG's contingency is set at 3%. Remember, if they don't use that contingency, it comes back as a deduction from the price. Just like on phase one, that contingency is $94,000, and looks like hopefully we may not use it at all.
Maybe just jinx this, but.
No. There's the architect's fee that includes everything that we've given them, plus it's all their contracts. Other fees, that includes ONG's pre-construction. It includes the owner's rep, commissioning, special inspections, cost of traffic study. We have also security system in there, telephone system in there, enhanced listening system in there, independent code review, independent structural review. We did keep about 80,000 still in there for city staff costs, which remember, we wanted to go to there. They said, give us a half a person, so, and so forth, but they didn't accept that. They didn't want to do it, so forth. So that will be coming out in contingency. We have, just in case, we have move management services of 150,000. We have storage expenses of 120,000, just in case. Remember, we're moving the library. So, there's a company that I've used before to move a library, nowhere to put all the shelves and so forth. There's that building permit fee, 365. We have legal fee in there for 20,000. There's also a state tax fee of 35,000, which is required. It's not reimbursable. So we have, we're waiting to hear for our builder's risk policy. We have $125,000 in there. We don't know what that is. We're waiting for Kermit to give us that. And then we have document printing and advertising of 2,500. We also have a miscellaneous of $800,000. That covers 4,637,000 for those other fees. Then you have FF&E, which we reduced, and then we still have 3,770,000 as owner's contingency. We don't use that other 800,000 that goes into contingency.
What does the alternates, potential alternates figure into this whole thing? If we're already at budget or a little bit over budget, even with these reductions, is it only if we don't use the contingencies that we can go down that path?
Or does that include the alternate?
No.
No.
It does not. There's only one alternate
Right.
that we included. It was a reduction of $540,000.
But those alternates that appear on these bid forms. in the
Right,
summary.
those are.
Those are not included in the
Right.
construction
And
cost.
At some point, will they be available for us to consider, depending on where we sit on the contingency, or are those off the table?
Well, I mean, yes, if we have contingency money left towards the end, yes.
And is there a,
So in the bid documents, it's a 90-day hold for the value of those alternates. As we look to some of the, like, as we scope through the site work, we ask that question, a lot of those alternates are out there 2 years. Is he willing to hold a cost for what is a projected alternate? Unfortunately, the honest answer is if he has to hire a vendor a year from now to do something that he quoted today, even though it was always planned that the work was 2 years away, he can't hold that number. But if he engages a contract with that vendor, so if it's the case of, say, you have an alternate that switches concrete side or bituminous sidewalks to concrete sidewalks, he's going to engage a concrete trade subcontractor to pour concrete sidewalks. He can include in their contract the ability to delay the award of the additional work. So in some cases, yes, they'll hold that number. In some cases, no, the number won't be available to you. But again, it's a question and we document that in the scope review and, if necessary, in the contract itself. So we're going from this point is I have the next 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to ask you to sit again. Our goal is to vet the values that we have here so that we can come back to you and say, the construction side at this point is, we have a $2 million problem between where we thought we were several months ago and where we are today. And we'll have vetted not just the first 4 primary trade contracts, but also mechanical, electrical, HVAC, and plumbing, because they are critical to the ongoing schedule of the project to get them engaged. So 2 weeks again, 2 weeks from tonight, you'll have an update as to where the construction guide cost ultimately is where we project it to be. And you'll have 7, 8 contractors to hear our recommendation for.
As you can see, we're over budget by 2.5 million. We really want to look at that with the scope reviews to address that. We really don't want to touch our contingency yet. We do have an agreement with ONG. They have 4.6 million in their contingency. They may, with an agreement, to put $1 million aside, and if they don't need it, they don't need it.
Correct.
Why don't you tell them that?
Yeah, no, so, right, so the contract states that we'll hold a contingency of 3% for things that are unblocked, right? And again, on a project like this, it's a big number, it's 4 point something $million, right? 4.6. So what we did say is that, you know, in the event that there's somewhat of a shortfall within reason, again, if we need half or 3/4, something like that, we would, when we enter into submit the guaranteed maximum price, we would essentially not put the 3%, we would say, all right, it's gonna be 2.3%, whatever, but we would stipulate it by stating that, you know, should we need the GMP contingency and we run out up to that amount that we've essentially given back, we would ask to be funded from the owner's contingency for those items. So that way it's money that you can use upfront that, again,
It's a team effort. We're all working together to get this project going and spent a lot of hours. Even grew a beard. Trying to look like me. So it's ongoing. We really, again, we're gonna meet again a joint meeting on September 29th. We already spoke to the mayor and canceled the city council meeting for Monday for us to be there. So we've done that. And city council is on October 3rd. So by from tomorrow to 28th or 29th is the meeting, we will be at budget. We'll have an idea where if we have to use a little contingency for that. Scope out all the rest of the trades and go from there.
Just a question. So based on that calendar right there, the site work won't be approved until then, right? By the city council.
Correct.
So then how long to get up and running after that?
So we had built into our schedule, the insurance and the bonding and writing the contract. We had phase 2 site work contractor engaging on October 17th. We're pushing that process or squeezing that process 2 weeks. In the case of site work, I don't foresee an issue. We've already have a contract engaged. We know they know how to put together their bond and insurance
Right.
but to what is
And
more
Dan is
important,
Speaking of this, the company who's on the job now is staying on the job.
right, our low apparent site work contractor is the contractor that has the phase 1 enablement. But more critical, and I think what's important to be said here is the reason we need you to meet again in 2 weeks is because the site work or the steel contractor and the concrete contractor are on the critical path to what comes next. So it's not just that they're going to be physically on site, but we need to engage them to start the process of developing the shop drawings for the structure itself. And the rebar gets ordered to start the concrete on time. We don't have any, what we call float in the available time for releasing those 2 trades. We need them on board. That's where the hit here is. We're taking a 2-week hit because, again, we want to make sure budget is right and that everyone is safe. So we're going to take a 2-week hit on what we had planned for releasing contracts to those 2 critical path trades.
And CJ is, because I stopped at before, he was there. Project manager was really good. And he's already looking at Colin, how he can move around and so forth. So
So those 4 trades have been vetted. So are you saying that you think that the budget has more to be worked at?
I have to meet with each of the involved trades in each of this list of 15 or so value management items, confirm the value, get them to make an agreement that they will give back upon award for whatever particular item is. In the case of CJ Fucci, they're going to give back the 240,000 if we lessen the section of subbase.
Yeah. And then just procedurally, do they actually resubmit a bid with that amended?
They do not. We record that in the scope review minutes and we record that on the cover of the contract.
so, right, so essentially the way you look at it is we're not, we've if the window bid comes in on budget, we are gonna end up signing contracts in the amount of $149 million, despite the fact that we get a path that gets us to 146 million, we have to write the contracts for more and pull that out. So we have to do that.
There'll be change orders that decrease the
Correct. That'll be issued right out,
Negative
right out,
change.
right out of the gate.
Contract one day, deduct change order the next.
Correct.
yes.
The two trade bids that are included in the projected total trade cost, and the final cleaning is relatively small, but so those aren't gonna have much of an impact in
Well, no,
that.
they're in there.
They're in there.
We carried the second bidder.
Second bidder.
You did,
Right, so, so if you were to flip through and see bid package 2.13 for cleaning, you would see that the low bid is not the number that I carried into the equation for how much your trade contract cost will be.
okay, I misunderstood. Thought they were minus those two trades completely.
And so there is only one package left to bid. We're already aggressively looking at opportunities. You see a couple of the items on this list that are going to reduce the scope of work for the aluminum and window contractor. You know, shorten some windows, make a couple of windows smaller. We get that locked in. The mission that SLAM has now is to create that document changes so that I can issue an addendum, a last addendum to the curtain wall trade, and they can figure their bid on this additional list of deducts. So that's where we are with the bid process.
It's,
So if you're gonna
Yeah.
award,
excuse me,
just say concrete. You're gonna award to the lowest bidder, but there might be deducts. So you have to give the contract for the base bid. And then the next day,
That comes in
Take a
first.
deduct from them.
and can they say no?
No, because it's all agreed.
It'll be agreed
It will be
upon.
part of their contract in narrative stating that at the scope review meeting, you agreed to the change in this amount.
Okay.
Right.
And again, I
So
mean,
it's-
it's really, these meetings they're intensive, but they're not these, I mean, the idea here is to build relationships with these people and have good conversations and build, so it's, I mean, could someone one day say, oh yeah, that's the number, and then when they get the contract, then we just wouldn't sign the contract. I mean, it's, I'm not worried about someone reneging on a number that they gave us.
We're about to engage these contractors with large contracts amounts for a project that's extended.
And we tend
We're
to do a little
developing
bit of work
relationships
So I don't think
if we don't have them already.
burn that bridge like that.
yeah. Foolish. That would-
So there'll be a 2-week hit on the timeline because of this whole process.
Because
but
we're not approving
on the
tonight.
site. Not in the site work, because we still have the same company working on site work.
Well,
Or will
Right,
it
there's a
just be-
2-week delay in the awards.
Okay,
We're going to mitigate the damage to the construction schedule or the impact to the construction schedule. Where we don't want, right now, we feel that with the shop drawing process starting 2 weeks late, we can still have rebar available to the site for an October 17th start of foundations.
And just so you know, so the contract award process is twofold. What'll happen is once a trade contractor, we make the recommendation to the building committee, the Board of Education, and City Council, saying, we recommend award, please approve us to enter into an agreement with this company, give you all the information. Once that gets through City Council, the letter is already teed up on our end. That next day, they receive a limited notice to proceed. It's a contractual document that says that you are hereby released to work on all of your procurement. So the timer for things like those critical submittals, it starts. And then the contract comes, which, those do take a little bit of time, but the contract is necessary before those people put any boots on the ground. So we make sure we have insurance in place and all that. So with the steel contractor, we need them engaged on their own property with the shop drawings. That's what that limited notice to proceed does. As Dan said with Fuji, the time frame that we had to execute a contract with the site contractor that we didn't know at the time. We're figuring that it's going to be the first go, but they signed the exact same contractor, right? So that we should be able to absorb a little bit of that here because they're citing the same exact.
Okay, on B, can we table B? Have a motion to table B because we're not ready to, it's time to amend the contract.
You don't,
And,
you don't need a motion. You can just.
oh, I could just table. It's tabled. Should work like home. Okay, the next one is phase one application, certificate of payment. You have, send it to you, you have it in your hands. Again, I must commend the city, ONG. Tomorrow I'll drop off this bill. Next Friday I'll have it. I give it to Dave. They process it. I just want to make sure how long. Gave it to him on Friday. I called CJ on Wednesday. They already put the money in the bank. So that's great for everybody.
So you can trust us now.
Yes. I can trust.
And honestly, it came up during the scope review with CJ Fucci
Yeah.
that they appreciated the fact that we prioritized cash flow, that they saw their cash flow happen as fast as we could make money move from bank to bank.
It cost me, how many, 12 pizzas? But, it's the way it's the way Marinol works with the contractors, everybody. They're all engaged,
Try to make it a team atmosphere.
right? And we asked for a couple of things, like, there was one thing on this scope he forgot to put in, no problem, I'll take care of it. You know what I mean? They're really, that's the kind of relationship where they know they're gonna get paid within 4 days, 5 days. That's unheard of, So, we appreciate the city and ONG moving those things forward, because it really helps the project. They know they get, and the owner was there, and he was very complimentary to get the check. 4 days.
My first working relationship with CJ Fucci, and it's worked out well. We have now a mutual respect and we're plowing through this work.
I did a project with them 30 years ago because Nancy Fucci was the owner. Unfortunately, her husband died at a young age. We just gave now the cousins are in charge. And they're appreciative of everything we've done.
Yeah.
So as you can see, the first page is what we're looking for, approval of $1,094,691. That's a total with, if you go to page 3, $1,019,487 is what Fuji will be, CJ will be getting. The difference is the cost that are in line that ONG has. So this has been vetted by Mario, myself, SLAM, and Construction Solutions. What happens, they send a pencil copy.
This represents really the culmination of work that happened in the month of August, with the achievement of paving the large lot, and each line item represents the scope of work that they completed in that month of August. So we get some big dollars in the expense of the asphalt, finished up drainage. There's a few other odds and ends in there, but that's the lion's share of the cost.
So can I have a motion to, well, the check goes to ONG for $1,094,691. Have a second? Second, online?
Oh, over here.
Yeah.
Oh, you got the numbers transposed. 1,019,487.
No.
1,094,691. Gotcha. Oh, good, because you got it
Yeah,
here.
they-
I like the second number better.
I'm taking all the same things.
At this rate, you will anyway.
Keep the meeting going.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Down.
Opposed. Or no, I'm not, sorry, abstain. Did you have a little mini stroke? Sorry about that.
Right, exactly.
Next one is Michael Horton Associates. They were the structural consultant. I attached their letter to their bill that they approved. So their contract was for $37,000. As we approved them, we did it. I have a motion to pay Michael Horton $37,000.
So moved.
Donna and Pat. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next one is IES. That's, remember, the mayor had to sign that contract because that's the commissioning agent. So IES is $1,068. Have a motion to approve IES. Armand, second. Pat? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next one, the first one is SLAM, their monthly payment of $115,475. It's stated in the project. Two of those was bidding and construction administration. Okay. Armand, second.
Second.
Donna? Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The last one is SLAM again. Remember, this is the agreement we had for $260,000 to do the structural steel pre-detailing so we can get it out to the street of $260,000. So Armand, have a second? Second, John. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Hold on. Who's that? Here?
Yep.
Got a question?
No, he said aye.
Aye. Oh, thank you.
Nice to hear from you.
Yes. Could I have a motion? Do we need a motion to go in executive session? Could I have a motion to go in executive session for regarding negotiations, Armand, inviting in the building committee and the two suits.
Board of Ed.
No.
You need to stick around.
No.
So Sue, you can get off. You don't have to come into
Your
this.
question.
A couple sandwiches in your pocket.
And
We
Marissa,
can drop off.
Sue can
Yes.
drop off. Gary can't because he's on building committee.